Hey, how's it going everyone? So in this video we're going to talk about the future of Street Fighter 5 as well as some quick thoughts on Street Fighter 6 as we are getting closer and closer to the next console generation in about a year from now. A little heads up, I might sound a little negative and salty in this video, and that's because I am. This entire video revolves around Ono having an interview with Eurogamer titled, "What does the future hold for Street Fighter 5?" All the questions asked, there was a lot of answers from Ono that just, I don't know, rustled my jimmies. And I'm sure it's going to annoy a lot of you guys too. If you guys want to read the full interview, of course, I'll provide a link in the video description. I highly suggest you do, as this answers a lot of questions and prepares us going into 2020, what's going on with Street Fighter 5 and possibly Street Fighter 6. So I'm going to start reading off just some hand-picked questions and some answers. I'm not going to read like the full answers. I'm not trying to put it out of context, but there's a lot of jibber jabber here that you guys don't really need to hear. So I'll just read off the first question they asked Ono, and that is, in terms of the big updates that have been teased to be coming later this year, well, none of it's leaked so far, just, because Capcom always gets their updates leaked. And Ono replied, "I can't really go into details. The main thrust will be this additional mode. At the moment, we have group tournament. It's about 8 people that can be invited to a lobby. This new mode will blow that out of the water in terms of scale. We're still working out details in the beta, but it'll certainly be dozens, hundreds of people that can take part in this tournament at the same time. We're fine-tuning that, and that'll be ready in the coming months." So this kind of solidifies well, it's not even a leak, right? We know a tournament mode is coming for Street Fighter V. The actual leak is the fact that we'll be getting a new edition called Tournament Edition for Street Fighter V. So this seems to be their main focus of it. Now, the thing about this is that, yes, it's exciting that we're going to get a huge tournament mode for Street Fighter V, but the netcode is garbage. The netcode is garbage. Why does it matter how many players? We can barely hold 8-man lobbies, Ono. How are we going to have hundreds of players in a tournament from different parts of the world, right, if I can't even play my next door neighbor without insane rollback? So, it sounds hype on paper, but for the people watching this video, you guys know exactly, exactly how it is. It doesn't mean much if the core part of the game is fundamentally broken. So it just doesn't make sense to me. I mean, this will be fun for my stream. We're obviously not going to take it seriously, and we're going to have a blast playing it, but we're not going to take it seriously because we know that the rollback and the connections, all that, are going to be bad. However, I can swallow my words here if Capcom does happen to fix the netcode, but I don't think they will, and I also don't think it's worth it as well, considering the longevity of Street Fighter V seems to be coming close to an end here. So, I'll talk more about this in a bit in the video, but a tournament mode is not going to get people hype. Right now, people want mechanics. We want the game to feel fresh again and new again, especially since it's so old right now. Okay, so I'm going to read the next question, and that is this part of a big refresh for Street Fighter V? He's talking about the update. And Ono replied, "Not so much. It's just the addition of this new feature. Maybe when I say big update, you're imagining the old days of Super and Ultra. I think it's a big addition to the game, but as you've seen, the strategy for the title has been gradually adding more features, more characters, and it's gradually gotten bigger over time." I mean, I sort of agree with what Ono's saying, but honestly, it seems like the game is getting less and less updates the older it gets. Ever since Season 4, we've basically gotten nothing. We've heard many things, too, at the beginning of the it's hard to top Arcade Edition. That was pretty much the peak of Street Fighter V. Once you got that Arcade Edition update, they've constantly raised the bar, but now it's just very, very subpar in terms of updates and support for the game. The netcode, once again, seems to be getting worse every single patch. They said at the beginning of Season 4 that they're doing things differently this year, which at this point literally translates to we're doing nothing this year, and we're going to barely give you any updates. That's pretty much what it meant. We also have heard many hints and leaks that, they're working on a V system, and maybe it's being held back because it's taking so long to update. And, we've always had hints of story modes and boss battles and all these different offline modes that we can play. And we've also heard, I think it was from Matt Edwards, sorry if I named the wrong person, but he basically said the story of Street Fighter V is not over yet during the EU stream. insinuating they are working on something big. But in terms of Season 4 right now, even if the update that comes out when they announce on November 17th or at Capcom Cup doesn't really count as Season 4 if it's at the end of the year. So, like, honestly, I just feel like Ono, he's got a lot of nerve to say that, I think. It's you know, he says it's not going to be a big refresh. Like, he straight out says that. And, like I said, they're really banking on this tournament mode. Okay, next question. One slightly different approach for the Intel World Open in the past when Capcom Tour... Oh, sorry. This was another answer that Ono said to the same question. Said, one slightly different approach for the Intel World Open. In the past, when the Capcom Tour was running, we'd have the freedom to add a character while people are practicing, or make a change or adjustment to the balancing. We want to create a level playing field as it's such a large audience. Anyone can take part. As I've mentioned recently, there have been some things coming in November and December. Once that's out, we're going to lock the game down for a while, so people aren't being caught out by balance changes when the qualifiers open up around February-March time. We're getting some big updates out of the way for the end of the year, and then we're going to say that this is Street Fighter V as it exists now, and then let it run its current form until the tournament is over. So this has me very worried. So they're basically saying that, like, after this update comes out, after Capcom Cup, they're batting down the hatches and we're going pure, like, no communication again and no updates until this Intel World Open. Now, if you guys don't know, Street Fighter V is going to be part of the Intel World Open, which is part of the 2020 Tokyo Olympics held in Japan, and it has a huge prize pool. I think it's 500,000 total, but it's split between both. So 250,000 for Street Fighter V. It's going to have an Olympic teams represent different countries. It's great, and it's a big opportunity for Capcom for sure. But reading this, like, oh, they want an even level playing field, and they're talking about balance and stuff. I'm like, please, they're just using the Intel World Open as an excuse to just not have to work on Street Fighter V for a while. Season 4 is by far the worst season in this game, and to have Season 5 be basically the same thing, where we don't get updates for, like, the first part of the year, I mean, it just sounds really, really bad. I don't doubt that the tournament scene, I always talk about myself, the esports scene for Street Fighter V is quite strong, but I mean, Street Fighter V is basically just becoming a spectator sport at this point, you know. It just feels like that. Especially for people that haven't been playing the game for a while. This is not something that's going to bring people back. You know, the game, it doesn't need just characters, right? It needs more than that at this point right now. Because we have so many characters in the game already. And I'll talk about this a little bit more. But, so, just to summarize what we just talked about. November, coming up on the 17th. We're going to hear an announcement of something. December will be whatever else. And then that's it. And we'll be getting no big updates until after the Olympics, pretty much. And yeah, I guess it's due to balance, but I mean, I don't buy that at all. I mean, if we look at the, like, tournament history and stuff, there's really never been much of a situation where, like, a character just came out and, like, it's just turning the tournaments on its head, and that for the most part, when new characters come out, they're very, very undertuned in the first place, you know, or pro players don't want to take the risk of switching characters mid-tournament like that anyways, right? So, you know, we're just literally looking at it from the tournament point of view, and so is Capcom. So, you know, in terms of the game getting any more sales, you know, because they need people playing the game, because they need to sell the DLC. You know, a large part of the amount the game's getting funded and staying alive to this day is people purchasing DLC, costumes, stages, whatever. We have no fight money, so we're forced to use money, and also from sponsorships, from tournaments and such, from people competing. So, I mean, to say that they're not going to have any updates due to a single tournament alone is kind of silly. We have many large tournaments, like we have 2 Evos now, and we have Capcom Cup, and that hasn't stopped Capcom before for releasing a balance patch mid-season, but now they're using this Tokyo Olympic thing for that reason. I mean, maybe I'm being a little too negative about it. You guys can let me know in the comments, but that's just how I see it. Okay. So Ono also replied to this and said, we're still working on it. He's been talking about Street Fighter 5, and we still have around 500,000 matches a day. That's something that provides us with a massive amount of data. We can view the inputs and outputs of all these matches and use it as research when it comes to which characters need nerfs, which need buffs. That's something we're going to be doing on an ongoing basis. This, I think, is total bullshit as well. Capcom using data to figure out who needs nerfs and buffs, if that's really true, what data are they even looking at? I mean, you don't even have to look at data to understand at these days which characters we're seeing a billion times in top 8s, or we're seeing with high win rates online. I mean, I'll just name an example right now. Like, the highest win rate character for the longest time has been M. Bison online and ranked. Problem X won Evo, and I have nothing against M. Bison. I'm just using this as an example. Problem X won Evo, and M. Bison has, like, right now I think it's Urian, but for the longest time it's always been M. Bison. M. Bison didn't get any nerfs at all. Didn't get any nerfs, okay? Or Gachi-kun winning Capcom Cup with Rashid. Rashid got some buffs. And now the character's rampant. He's everywhere. I mean, he's not as rampant as, like, Akuma in Tekken 7 right now, but he's rampant. You can't help but notice, you know? I don't think they look at data. I mean, how could they? We have characters like, the most popular character is still Ryu. If you look at their own statistics, it's still the most popular character, but he has literally 0 tournament representation. We just talked about before. Well, the video's not released yet, sorry, but in case you guys don't know, Ryu has only been in top 8 ever since season 1 3 times. Like, his representation is null. He's still 0 and 3. They definitely don't listen to community feedback unless you count Cammy, right? So I mean, it doesn't really make sense. If I feel like when I read these balance patches for these characters, I feel like Capcom literally just flips a coin, or they have separate teams for separate characters and they don't communicate with each other. One hand doesn't talk to the other, and they just decide or not if the character's okay. There's some characters like Juri that are just literally left untouched, right? Or even Mika. And then there's characters that just are strong, but they get stronger for no reason, right? Like, just give Caddy some extra health. You know, let's give Rashid better Oki. You know, and it doesn't really make sense that Ono would talk about. They have this massive amount of data, but they obviously have nothing to show for it. I'm not saying that fighting games are easy to balance, but I mean, seriously, this is not advanced arithmetic here on which characters we have literally not seen for 3 years now, you know, in tournaments. Like, come on. Okay, here's the next question. In terms of the future of Street Fighter, is that something you've got your eyes on? There's a new generation coming next year. How's Street Fighter going to fit into that? So Ono gave a really interesting answer here. He says, I've seen the Wired PlayStation 5 article and was looking into it in amazement. I think for something like Street Fighter, though, the best thing is not to rush out with something at launch of a next generation console. But let the next generation start, let the install base increase, see the capabilities in the wild, and then take a look how we approach our game design from the bottom up on that new platform. At the moment, I think with things like the Intel World Open next year, we've got plenty of things to keep us busy, and we want to keep our stewardship of current versions of the title, and make sure they're running fine and have these opportunities. When the time's right, we'll look into the next gen possibilities, but no sooner than that. So this is really interesting. Like, he's specifically talking about Street Fighter 6, right? And, you know, if they're planning to launch it early when the next gen start. Now, it's really strange why Ono is saying not to rush out and all that, because Street Fighter titles usually come out at the beginning of the console generation. So, I mean, I don't know if Ono even gets to decide when they start working on it, or if they're already working on Street Fighter 6 as we speak. But, you know, this is a good thing and bad thing. I mean, it's a bad thing because I obviously want Street Fighter 6 to come out. I feel like it's Street Fighter 5 is basically run its course. We got our 4 years. I know that Ultra Street Fighter 4 went on for a long time, almost 8, but that was because of Street Fighter Cross Tekken flopped so hard that Capcom literally had to go back and re-support Street Fighter 4 and make that their base fighting game, right? Otherwise, we would have had Cross Tekken for 4 years and then on to Street Fighter 5. So, the 4 years is on now for Street Fighter 5. They said they support the 2020, but it looks like they're going to hang on to Street Fighter 5 for a little longer here. The good news is that they're going to take their time, which is nice. We want them to take their time, and we want this not to be too rushed out and unpolished like Street Fighter 5 was. So there's that. Them using this Intel thing, once again, making them sound like they're busy and stuff. I mean, I don't buy that at all for the same reason I just talked about before. Ono has hinted various times that Street Fighter 6 is not coming soon. He made some jokes about it. I think Boss Logic did just a fan art cover basically of like what Street Fighter 6 title would look like and how he really anticipates the game. And Ono made a joke and he's like, "Wow, I feel so honored you chose Street Fighter for our illustration gemstone. However, this is a bit too early, isn't it? Could you please wait for 10 years?" And he put like a joking face. And yeah, Street Fighter 5 is still announced as the main title for Evil Japan in 2020. And we're going to assume they're having another large prize pool for CPT. So I was going to assume they would announce Street Fighter 6 in 2020 and be released in 21. But now it's looking at 2022 at the earliest, unless Ono's full of shit and he's not telling us exactly what's going on. So, I mean, that's still like a year or two after console generation. Of course, the announcement of Street Fighter 6 will be very hype because everyone wants that kind of fresh start for the game. Because, like I said, there's a lot of things in Street Fighter 5 now where, like, I feel like the game, yes, there are a lot of people still playing it, and the turn scene is doing good, but in terms of sales and sales-wise, I feel like it's time for them to start the next title. Because Street Fighter 6 is still going to have strong esports, right? It's still going to have strong DLC or whatever they have planned. That all carries over onto the title, right? But the player base will be so much larger, especially for next gen. I don't think Capcom would want to sit on their hands while other companies make, fighting game titles, and then Capcom's just sitting on the sides, still trying to support Street Fighter 5. I mean, could you guys really imagine playing Street Fighter 5 for another 3-4 years? Like, could you guys seriously sit down and think about that? Like, still playing Street Fighter 5 for another 3-4 years? Because I can't. Okay. So they asked Ono another question here, and they said, Street Fighter 5 had a troubled launch. If we're launching a new one now, what would you do differently? And I'm not going to read the entire answer to this, but the first part he said, we definitely learned a lot from launch, the main thing being our netcode. We took a lot of heat for the quality of that. It's easy to look back now and say we got through it, but it was a tough period. We had to do a lot of work to improve that and get it to where it is today. That's one thing I definitely look at for any future title, and that has to be got right at launch. This answer is completely tone deaf. Ono is implying that the netcode is good now. It's not. It's worse than it was at launch. Street Fighter 5 has the worst AAA fighting game netcode right now. It's the worst. It's so bad it has unique things that other fighting games don't. Like, it never resyncs. It progressively gets worse and worse rollback as the match gets to the third set. We can't region lock. I have friends from EU who can literally not find matches anymore. They can't find matches because it's the opposite where they are locked. There's the ping issue. The bars are completely inaccurate. And yeah, it's just crazy. It's just crazy. And to be slightly fair, I mean, Street Fighter 5 was one of the first titles for this generation, and a lot of other fighting game developers have learned stuff from there. But I mean, it's still horrible, and Capcom has not been able to fix it. And by Ono saying that get it to where it is today is quite silly. I mean, unless Ono is literally just talking about Japan netcode. I mean, okay, great. Even though the majority of the player base is in North America and outside Japan. Yeah, I mean, I don't know what else needs to be said about the netcode. I mean, you guys know how it is. But I do like that Ono mentioned that they learned a lot from the launch. I hope so. So this makes me happy that Street Fighter 6. Hopefully they are aware that netcode is extremely important, and I hope GGPO is not even needs a license anymore, and I hope Capcom tries not to be ignorant about that and tries to, get with it now, because even NRS is setting the bar now for netcode, right? So, I mean, Capcom really needs to step it up on this. This is so important. I'm not too pessimistic about it because MVCI netcode was not bad. 30th anniversary netcode was not bad. However, I think with the esports side of Street Fighter, and they're now really pushing this tournament mode now, I think they need to set the bar even higher than that. It has to be perfect. It has to be perfect for how competitive they want the game to be. So yeah, this also has me worried on this answer because it almost implies that they're not going to fix the netcode for Street Fighter V at any point as well. So, yeah. Okay, next question. It says, the fan base seems really healthy. You walk past the Capcom Pro Tour at EGX and it feels like one of the most vibrant, well-attended parts of the show. But it does feel like Street Fighter has lost its place as a premier fighting game in the mainstream space because of Mortal Kombat 11. Is that something you're aware of and want to rectify? Ono replies, this comes up regularly every few years when a new title makes a big splash in fighting game fandom. 2 or 3 years ago, I was sitting down with journalists saying Dragon Ball is massive. And what are you gonna do? And what are we gonna do about that? Well, you're not asking me about Dragon Ball now, are you? Now Mortal Kombat 11 is big, and that's great. I think people that play games, particularly on console, will always have their eye on various titles. They don't just play one thing. Even in the same genre, they'll get on board with new titles, then move on to the next one. Street Fighter has a longer legacy and history than a lot of games. And building on our 30 years of history, building on 5, and then on 6, and then on 7, we're going to be creating more legacy and more history. I don't think we need to stop every time a new title becomes popular and pivot around that. If we did that, we'd be changing direction every few years, and we need to keep our eye on the future of our own franchise and keep going in that direction. When I read this, I think of it like we need games, really good fighting games to come out to light a fire on Capcom's ass and make them want to work hard. And, I feel like Capcom is really spoiled by the legacy of Street Fighter. It's such an adored franchise that players will still play it even if it's unsatisfactory or even if it's, honestly not as good as some other fighting games. And Ono's got a point, like Dragon Ball was huge, but we're not talking about it anymore, and Street Fighter V is still around. As for Mortal Kombat 11, Mortal Kombat 11 was the highest selling game for 2019. It might still be the highest selling game in 2019, but it was for a very long time, over half a year. Okay, NRS ain't crying in their sleep over that. The game sold extremely well. Their main focus on sales and not necessarily on tournaments. Street Fighter V is the opposite in this case. But in terms of sales, Street Fighter V, over the years, has picked up, but in general, especially at launch, has been destroyed by many other fighting game titles. So, the legacy of Street Fighter and the large support for esports has kept it alive up until this point. But I really feel like Capcom they're not really trying as hard as they could unless somebody makes them step up to the plate. This kind of reminds me of like Intel and how they were doing CPUs and that until Ryzen started coming out, and now Intel's like, oh no, we have to try now, and we have to create, better market for this, and that's just how I see it. I want to make a video talking about, for example, Riot's fighting game with the League of Legends fighter, how that can make a lot of these Japanese companies step up to the plate, especially in terms of netcode and community feedback, and that's what we want, right? So, like I said, you can look at this in a negative way, or you can look at it in a positive way, but Ono and the team are very confident that they don't need to rush anything right now. So, that's pretty much all the questions I want to read from that interview. I guess we'll close this off by saying that, I know we're all waiting for Street Fighter 6 at this point. I don't want to sound... I did sound really negative in this video, now that I think about it, on Street Fighter 5. But I have enjoyed Street Fighter 5, but I would rather start playing Street Fighter 6. I feel like Street Fighter 5 has basically run its course. I think that adding more characters is not going to help the game at all. I think we have enough characters in the game right now. What we need now is a massive change of balance or mechanics that will make the game feel brand new, and thus the higher your your character base in the game will seem that much bigger because all these characters have now changed, and we're going to revisit a lot of these characters, and that's something we've been waiting for a very, very long time. The last time we had something like this was with the second V triggers, but even that still has to be something that we still wanted more. I do think Capcom did do a good job keeping Street Fighter V alive all the way up to Season 4, but I really do think the game is running on fumes right now, and it's purely a spectator game at this point. So I really want to get your thoughts on this, guys, on Street Fighter V right now. Of course, I am excited for November 17th. I am excited that this update will be big and will change a lot. And if it's not, I'm going to be quite salty because that means I have to wait all the way until after the Olympics and then go from there because we're going to have like a complete blackout of the game. And I'm also, kind of salty that we have to wait for so long now for Street Fighter 6. At least we have Guilty Gear coming around the corner in 2020, so that's good too. But in terms of me, I mean, damn, man. I just got to be very, very patient. And hopefully Capcom knows what they're doing. And, they address some of the issues that the game has right now. So, yeah, just my food for thought, guys. Let me know in the comment below what you guys think about all this. And I'll see you guys soon. Take care, everyone.